Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. We've got Into Sports, Evan on the podcast here. We're going to be giving you our best bets for week 4 of the NFL season. Evan, you want to give us your first bet?
Yep, first pick. This game was moved to the 4 o'clock window. I'm going to take the Bears plus 2.5 facing the Colts at home. The Colts defense is overrated. They are number 1 on Football Outsiders DVOA, but they've played Jacksonville, Minnesota, and the Jets, so their defense hasn't really been tested by a competent offense. And they're without Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell. Their only receiver is an old T.Y. Hilton. Phillip Rivers, I think, is going to struggle. Also, when you add the fact that there's going to be 15 mile per hour winds, what do we always talk about with Phillip Rivers? Kind of has that noodle arm. His ball is going to flutter around in the wind. I think Rivers is going to struggle with the weather much more than Foles. And the Chicago team was energized when Nick Foles entered the ball game last week. 20-0 run after Nick Foles' entrance into the game. He inspires that confidence in a locker room. Whenever you hear players talk about Nick Foles, they always mention Super Bowl MVP. They're confident that he can take them to the promised land. They were energized last week when Foles came in the game. He's an upgrade over Trubisky. The line says Indy is 4.5 points better, with them being favored by 2.5 on the road. Indy is not 4.5 points better than Chicago. I'll take the Bears 23-21 to win straight up and cover.
Okay, I like that pick. I think it's interesting. I'm staying away from that game. I think the two teams that we haven't really seen full tests of yet, but we'll see this week. I'm excited to see that game. All right, my first pick is the Cowboys minus 4.5 at the Browns. And what do we know about the Browns? They beat up bad teams. They struggle against good teams. That theory has shown to be true this season. They've looked great the past 2 weeks against the Bengals and the Washington football team. They've beat them very handily. In week 1, they got killed by the Ravens 38-6. And the Cowboys are a good team. Their record might not reflect it, but they are a very good team with a very explosive offense. Baker himself said it would be great if he got into a shootout with the Cowboys this week. I think it's the opposite for the Browns. We know the Cowboys force shootouts. In every game this season, the opposing quarterback has thrown for 30 or more times. The Browns are much better when they can run the ball. They're 7-1 when Baker throws the ball 26 or less times, and 8-17 when he throws the ball more than that. The Browns secondary is the weak spot of their team. The Cowboys receivers and weapons are the strong point of their team. They're some of the best in the NFL. They're going to rip this secondary up. We saw it with the Bengals. We saw it with the Ravens. And yet, you have to believe we're going to see it with the Cowboys this weekend. The Browns have been much better when we've seen them get moving with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on the ground. And we aren't going to see it in this game against the Cowboys. They will not be able to keep up with the Cowboys in a shootout that I think is likely to happen. I'm taking the Cowboys minus 4.5 all day.
Yeah, I actually like that pick. My next pick is going to be the Miami Dolphins getting 5.5 points at home facing Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. Miami, during this COVID period, is one of the most valuable home fields. Why? In September, October, teams typically struggle with the temperature and humidity. And for this game, 88 degrees, 73% humidity. That's going to be tough to play in. Miami is used to the heat. They play, practice, and live in it. Seattle is not. And also, Seattle to Miami is the longest road trip in the NFL. And travel is going to be more difficult with the COVID experience. And let's talk about Seattle for a minute. They have a negative yards per play differential. What does that mean? Seattle's opponents average more yards per play than Seattle does. Seattle snaps the ball, their opponent snaps the ball. Seattle's opponent is gaining more yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 81 QBR, that's 5th in the entire National Football League. And his number 1 receiver, Devontae Parker, is fully healthy now. And they're facing a Seattle secondary and defense that is last in opponents' yards per play. Teams like Cowboys are just feasting on the secondary. And the secondary is without their 2 best defensive backs. Jamal Adams and Quinton Dunbar are both out. Bad secondary just gets atrocious very quickly. I also think this is a down spot for the Seahawks. They're coming off 2 big games in a row that went down to the wire. It's easy to overlook the Dolphins. Miami has 3 days of extra rest coming off a Thursday night game. I think Seattle wins 31-27, but Miami covers the 5.5 point spread.
All right, I can totally see that. A lot of good handicaps there. It's just hard for me to bet against Russell Wilson at the moment. He's playing some great football, but I like the pick. Now, my second pick, I've got Ravens -14 at the Washington football team. I love the Ravens as heavy favorites in this game. We all know what happened to the Ravens last Monday night against the Chiefs. They were absolutely humiliated. They had a terrible game. I think they're really going to want to come out here, bounce back, show the world they're still the same Ravens we all know. And that's not what Washington wants to see. Big lines do concern me a little bit sometimes because there's so many ways to backdoor cover. But Washington to me is the fourth worst team in football at the moment. They've looked really bad on that offense. Their secondary has not looked good whatsoever. And we all know the Ravens' tendency to blow out bad teams. They've just steamrolled them over the past couple of years in the Lamar Jackson era. The Ravens, over that span of time, have beaten what I would consider bottom 10 teams by an average of 28 points, 4 touchdowns. The other teams just have not had a chance through the entire game, and I expect to see that here. The Washington offense is not going to be able to get anything going. Terry McLaurin, who is by far the best weapon on that offense, might not even play, which would be a devastating blow. But even if he does, we have seen Odell Beckham Jr., who plays a similar play style to McLaurin, really struggle against that sticky man coverage in Baltimore. I really think that Dwayne Haskins and that offense is really going to struggle to move the ball. Lamar Jackson is not going to struggle at all. We also know Chase Young is out. So I think it's going to be rough for Washington. I like Baltimore here, -14 to roll over the Washington football team.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought about it actually earlier in the week. But that 14, that's a tough number to lay out. My third pick is going to be the Bills. 3-point favorites going to Las Vegas to face the Raiders. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for this last pick, but then I look around at the lines and I said, let me bet against the Raiders. They've been outgained in every game. They have cluster injuries at wide receiver. Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards. So Hunter Renfrow is the only notable receiver versus an elite Buffalo secondary. Bills are third in yards per completion. They throw the ball down the field. Raiders are 21st in yards per completion. Derek Carr, he checks the ball down, and now he loses his deep threat. This is not an explosive offense whatsoever. Also, Vegas will be without their first-round corner, Damon Arnett, and $20 million tackle, Trent Brown, for this game. They're both out injuries. I think Sean McDermott, the Bills head coach, is going to take a good look at what Belichick did last week to limit this Raiders offense to just 20 points. And half of those points came in fourth quarter garbage time, so the Patriots really shut down the Raiders. And the Bills won last week, but they nearly blew a 28-3 lead. Listening to some post-game comments, they know they were bailed out by a pass interference call. They're going to have enough motivation in this game to beat up the Raiders. Josh Allen, let's talk about him, because he's been lights out so far. 85 QBR, that's fourth in the league. And he has Stephon Diggs at receiver, and Vegas is going to have no chance of covering Stephon Diggs. Bills plus 0.6 yards per play differential. Vegas minus 0.6 yards per play differential. The Bills are simply much better. I'll take them to win by a touchdown, 30-23 on the road.
Okay, I like that pick a lot. Buffalo, Josh Allen, that offense has been playing very, very well, so I like that pick a lot, Evan. All right, my final pick. This is my third and final pick. We got the Saints -3 at the Lions. I love the Saints here, -3 going to Detroit. And I know the injuries for the Saints are not very promising, but that's accounted in this line. I think there's an overreaction on both sides to what we saw last week. Lions had a good game against the Cardinals, and we actually saw a good coaching week from Matt Patricia. Not something we're used to seeing. We also saw the Saints lose to the Packers in a game that they were favored in. To me, the gap between these two teams is much bigger than 3 points. The Saints team, to me, is still the sixth best team in football at the moment. And thanks to Evan for this one. The Saints have won their last 17 against the spread in October, which is it's a trend that you definitely want to follow. That is crazy. And, you know, I was last week's performance by Drew Brees was promising to me. He looked capable against the Packers. In the past couple of games before that, he was really hindering that offense. I was not particularly impressed last week, but he definitely looked much more capable last week against the Packers. That was promising to me. Drew Brees is going to still show that this week. He's going to carve up this Lions defense that plays predominantly man coverage. We've got Matt Patricia versus Sean Payton in this one, the second or third best coach in the NFL versus the 31st. And the Saints right now are 1-2. They need to win this game. They need to go 2-2 if they want to stay competitive in the NFC and keep up with the Buccaneers. I like the Saints a lot here. You're not giving me more than a field goal. I really like that. Saints -3 at the Lions despite their injuries. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. Those were our 6 picks this week. Evan, thanks so much for being on the podcast. We'll be doing this every Saturday. We're going to be giving you our best bets. I look forward to these every week. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, peace.